I was on mute. Hi, everybody. It's good to see or be with you, rather. I can't really see anybody, but that's okay. You're here in spirit in my end. We're going to get started here shortly. I just want to give people a few minutes to get in and get settled. In the meantime, I'd love to hear where everybody's tuning in from. Take a second to test out the question box. Tell me where you're joining us from, just to make sure that I can hear from you guys in that question box. State College, Pennsylvania. Oh, that's too funny. That's where I grew up. New Hampshire. Lovely this time of year. I hope it's getting a little bit warmer. Got a couple from Canada, Ontario, Toronto, Orlando, Florida, a little bit further from Canada. Wow, a bunch of Ohio's right away. New York City, South Carolina, Austin, Texas. Great city. I love it down there. Great tacos. Iowa, very nice. Got another couple of Canadas in there. San Antonio, go Spurs. Boca Raton, I love it down there. Oh my gosh, I bet it's amazing right now. Hi from Oregon. I was just out in Oregon. I love it down. I love it over there. I'm in Philadelphia for anybody who didn't catch me the first time I said it. So a little bit far from Oregon, but definitely worth the trip. New Jersey, Green Bay, Miami. Wow, got people all over the continent. The state between New York City and Boston can get a little muddled up there, can't it? It's a lot of different states all in one clustered area. SoCal, but you transplanted from Philly. That's quite a move. I also have family in SoCal, so I've been back and forth a couple of times. It's pretty different, but it's lovely. Charlene, is that how you say your name? I can see your chat. Your messages are only coming to me, but it's totally private from everyone else. Northeast Connecticut, though. Beautiful. I'm going to give people 2 more minutes and then we'll get started right here at 1:05 Eastern time. Orlando, another Orlando, New York City. Wow, Orlando to Toronto. That's certainly a lifestyle change for sure. Love both cities though. Let's see, we've got a few more. Oh, we've got another question about the chat. So the chat is private. It's when you send messages, it just comes to me. It won't be shown to anybody else that's attending the webinar. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry. All right, I think we've got just about everybody in. So I'm going to get us started. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. I want to get things rolling here. We've got a lot to cover. So let's get started. I'd like to kick things off today with a couple of housekeeping items for everyone on the call today. Just keep in mind that this will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. You can expect all the materials in your inbox soon after the webinar concludes. And that'll include a copy of the slides and the recording. Another note, all of our webinars, including this one, are easily found on the WordStream and Local IQ YouTube channels. You'll be able to rewatch this session and check out all the other awesome webinars that we've done in the past. Also, the reason why I had all of you practice using the question box, I want you to feel comfortable typing in your questions throughout the webinar. So be sure to stick around for the Q&A session at the end. I'll be able to answer as many of those questions as I can. Before we go any further, I also want to take a moment to level set on who we are at Local IQ, just so we're all starting from the same place. Some of you may already be working with us, which is great. Others may be completely new to us, and some of you might recognize us through our research and thought leadership under the WordStream by Local IQ brand. At a high level, Local IQ is a full service digital marketing platform and partner. We love to help businesses attract, convert, and retain customers by combining strategy, technology, and execution across all different types of channels. Think search and social, which is what we'll be covering today, but we also have a lot of expertise in display and more. A big part of what we focus on is making marketing more measurable and more efficient using data, automation, and AI as it continues to get more popular to improve how campaigns perform over time. And the reason I share that is because everything we're going to talk about today is grounded in that experience. So working across thousands of channels and campaigns and seeing firsthand what drives results really gives us a unique position to help. One thing we're really proud of is that we are a premier partner with all major advertising platforms. This isn't just something granted to any marketing platform out there. It's really only given to businesses that display clear campaign success for their customers, display thought leadership within the field, and meet a rigorous set of requirements for each platform. So we're very excited to share all of that expertise with you today. One more thing before we dive in, just a quick intro so you know who you're hearing from. Again, I'm Maddie. I'm based in Philadelphia. Go Birds for anybody who's into football. And I've been working in marketing and sales enablement for about 10 years now. I recently earned my master's degree in digital marketing. Today, I'm a content manager for USA Today Network and Local IQ, where I spent a lot of my time focused on helping businesses understand what's really working in digital marketing right now and what's not. So if anything really resonates with you guys today, I'd love to stay in touch. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn after the session. You can find me at Maddie Lippincott on there. You can also connect with Local IQ and WordStream in all kinds of different ways. We're all over social media, and obviously you can connect with us through our websites. Shameless plug, I work very closely with the social team, so I know that there's a lot of good stuff going out there on a daily basis. So I would really encourage you guys to stay in touch on those platforms. It's really a great help. Just going to go over what we're covering today really quickly. We'll start with what's changed because a lot has, as I'm sure everyone's super aware, especially when it comes to lead quality and targeting. Then we'll get into what's actually working right now when it comes to search and social ads, since those channels play super different roles when we're talking about campaigns and goals. From there, we'll bring it all together, walk through how to fix your funnel so you're not just driving traffic, but turning better leads into conversions. Finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. Again, make sure you're plugging any questions you have in the question box. You can do that at any time throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait until the end. Make sure that you capture it before it slips out of your brain. I know that happens to me a lot. Okay. Getting started with what's changed. I know I can't be the only one who has seen how campaigns are just performing in a super different way. There are tons of changes in the way that we interact with the online world now, and your customers are definitely experiencing that as well. A lot has shifted over the last few years. The way that people are discovering businesses, the way they evaluate their options when it comes to consumer goods, the number of touch points it takes before someone actually converts. It's all gotten super complex. At the same time, the platforms themselves have changed a lot. There's less visibility, more automation, and much heavier reliance on the signals you're feeding into the system. Um, so definitely like a whole different landscape if we're talking about over the last 10 years, basically everything has changed. So before we talk about what you can do differently, it's crucial to understand why the old approach doesn't really work the same way as it used to. First, I'd like to transport us back to middle school for something we all know and dread, a pop quiz. I want you to think about this one for a moment or two because it might seem super obvious, but then the answer is probably going to surprise you like it did for me. What percentage of website visitors do you think convert on their very first visit? Throw out any number, just whatever your instinct says. Take advantage of that question box. I want to hear what you guys think. This is super important because how you answer this question could give you a lot of insight about how you're thinking about and approaching your audience and your funnel currently. Let's see. 20%, 0%, that's bold. 5%, 7, another 25, kind of all over the map here, which is fair. I feel like I had no idea when I was Googling this question. It could be anything. We've got another 5%, 40 is pretty high, 50 even, 15. Got a lot of great suggestions in here. I don't think I see the right answer yet. Depends on product. That's also a really good, I didn't even think about it that way. Peter, you're on top of things. Okay, so the answer is just 2%, which means roughly 98% of people who land on your website are not converting the first time they visit. And when you really sit with that for a second, it's kind of wild, right? Because that means like the vast majority of your audience isn't ready to take action yet. They're still in that phase where they're researching, comparing options, or just kind of getting familiar with what you offer. But most marketing strategies aren't built built with that in mind. They're built around immediate conversions. And that's kind of where things start to break down. If your campaigns are primarily optimized for conversions, think like form fills, calls, purchases, you're essentially optimizing for the smallest, most ready to buy portion of your audience. Those are the people who are already close to making a decision and you just kind of nudge them over the finish line. Meanwhile, the other 98%, the people who need more time, more context, more touch points, more something, really aren't being nurtured or guided forward. What ends up happening is you're constantly trying to capture the same small group, that little orange bundle you see at the bottom of the slide, of high intent users instead of building a system that moves more people into that group. When that happens, it creates a ripple effect that you don't always see right away. On the surface, things probably look fine. You're getting leads, your campaigns are running, you're meeting your KPIs. But underneath, there are some issues building up. You're probably spending budget on people who aren't really a good fit for your product. Your sales team ends up following up on leads that go nowhere, which is frustrating and time consuming. And over time, your pipeline slows down because you're not consistently feeding it with qualified opportunities. So this isn't just a marketing problem, it becomes a business problem and a success problem, really. And it all starts with how we're thinking about targeting and lead quality. So oh my gosh, the shift we're seeing, whew, that was a close call. It didn't just happen randomly. There are a few major forces that are driving it. First, we have privacy updates, which seemingly feel like they're coming out every couple of weeks. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like we've been bombarded with privacy updates in the last few years. They've really limited how much data platforms can track and share. That means less visibility into user behavior. Second, there's been a lot of signal loss. Platforms simply don't have the same level of data they used to. And that makes it harder for them to accurately match ads to the right people. And third, there's a much heavier reliance on AI and automation. Sorry, animation written down for some reason. So instead of you manually controlling everything, the platforms themselves are making more decisions for you. But those decisions aren't always as good as the inputs they're given by people instead of AI. And that's really the theme we're going to keep coming back to. On top of that, customer behavior has gotten a lot more complex. If you look at TikTok alone as an example, the number of users actually making purchases on the platform has grown significantly over the last few years, from around 13 million in 2021 to nearly 40 million projected for this year. So in the last 5 years, it's nearly tripled. Um, at the same time, the growth rate is starting to level off, which tells us something important. This isn't just a trend anymore, it's becoming normal consumer behavior. People aren't just discovering products on social, they're buying right there in platform, researching there, moving between platforms throughout the entire decision process. So instead of a simple path like search to click to convert, like we've seen for the last, however long the internet has been there and however long people have been utilizing e-commerce, you've got users that are bouncing between channels like search and social and websites, often multiple times before they even take action. And that's what we mean when we say the journey has become much more complex. There are more platforms, so many more touch points, and a lot more noise competing for attention. So if your targeting strategy is only built around one of those moments, you're missing a huge part of how people actually make decisions today. When you look even closer at that shift in behavior and how much more complex the customer journey has become, this is where the real gap shows up. Most targeting strategies haven't evolved to match the new reality. A lot of campaigns are still built on broad demographics, basic interest targeting, and keywords. That was a huge thing 10 years ago. SEO, you couldn't get away from it. Again, those things aren't necessarily wrong, but they're incomplete at this point in time. They don't reflect how people are behaving today. Like I said, moving between platforms in order to make a purchase, engaging multiple times instead of, engage, click, convert, whatever I said before, and taking longer to make decisions. What you end up with is a disconnect between how your audience behaves and how you're targeting them. So we ask the question here, what actually works now? If behavior has changed this much and the old approach isn't keeping up, what can we do? What should you be doing differently to align with how people are discovering, how people are searching, how people are deciding on what they want to buy versus another? And this is where the shift happens from broad assumptions to much more precise signal driven targeting. We're going to break this down into a really simple framework that you can apply regardless of your industry. At the core, there are three signals that modern targeting runs on, basically. Intent, behavior, and identity. These are the inputs that platforms rely on now to decide who sees your ads, when they see them, how often they see them, how likely they are to take action, all of those different, consumer behaviors. And this is especially important in a world with less tracking and more automation because platforms can't rely on guesswork anymore. They rely on the signals that you provide to them. So instead of thinking about targeting as like, who do I want to reach per se, it becomes what signals am I giving to the platform to work with to make that happen. Let's take a look at intent first, which is what people are actively searching for. This is where search really shines because users are literally telling you what they need in real time. If someone searches for something like coffee shops near me, we can make a pretty safe assumption that they're looking for a coffee shop in the vicinity that they can go and make a purchase at. They're not just casually browsing. That's a super clear, very actionable signal. In a customer journey that's gotten more complex, these high intent signals are incredibly valuable because they cut through the noise and tell you exactly where someone is in the customer journey, excuse me. Intent isn't just interest, it's direction. It's super important and it tells you what someone is likely to do next. which leads us to behavior, which is what people do after that initial moment of intent. So going back to our example, um, someone searches coffee shops near me. What they do next tells you a lot more about how serious they are. Did they click on one listing and leave right away, or did they click into multiple options, check the menus, look at reviews, maybe even revisit a couple of times to compare with other coffee shops that they may have clicked on? Those actions are all signals that help you understand not just interest, but the level of intent. And this is where things really start to outperform traditional targeting because behavior reflects real actions, not just assumptions that we can make as business owners and marketers. um, Someone who clicks around, has compared options, and has spent some time on your website is in a very different place than someone who just uh, glanced at your listing and left or clicked on a different competitor. Behavior gives you rather a much deeper layer of intent and insight into where someone truly is in the journey and how close they are to taking an action. We also have identity. Who is the person that is searching? It's not just can get a little muddled uh, in the ether out there in the internet. Everybody's kind of faceless, but it's an actual person looking for an actual thing to spend actual money on, right? So let's keep building on the example we had. We know someone searched for coffee. We know they clicked around and showed interest. Now imagine you can actually identify them. Maybe they've joined an email list, signed up for a rewards program, or they're already in your CRM. That's where first party data comes in. This is data that you own, like email addresses, customer records, past interactions. Um, it's become much more valuable with all of the signal loss we talked about earlier, because now you're not just seeing anonymous behavior, you're attributing it to a real person with real consumer needs. That allows you to follow up in a much more meaningful way rather than through, you know, email ads. You can use personalized messaging. So when you combine identity with intent and behavior, you're not really guessing anymore. You're working with a complete picture of the person, um, what they want, and how they are likely to act. If you take one thing away from this section, I've said it a couple of times already, but it's behavior is more powerful than assumptions. Demographics might tell you who someone could be, but behavior tells you what they're actually interested in and how close they are to taking action. In a world where the customer journey is getting more complex by the day, by the minute, by the second, this distinction really matters. The closer your targeting aligns with real behavior, the more relevant and effective your campaigns become. This all leads to a really important shift in mindset. You're not just targeting audiences, you're training the algorithm as well. Platforms are constantly learning from the inputs you give them, such as keywords, audience signals, data. In today's environment, where automation plays a bigger role and will likely play an even bigger role here soon, that learning matters even more. And weak signals lead to wasted spend. And this is another place where most campaigns are falling short. Even with all of these capabilities, they're still feeding the algorithm weak or incomplete signals, things like broad targeting parameters, not really utilizing segmentation, very little first party data. So the platform is probably doing its best, but it doesn't have enough high quality information to work with. That's what leads to lower quality leads, higher costs, and less efficient performance. So again, this isn't necessarily a budget issue. It's more about structure, and it starts with the signals that you're feeding into the system. Okay, now that we've covered what's changed and how targeting works today, let's talk about how to apply this starting with search. Search is still one of the most powerful channels available when it's used the correct way, that is. The key here is capturing intent and doing it in a more strategic way than just bidding on keywords like we used to do. One of the biggest advantages of search is that it doesn't rely on assumptions. I know we've talked a lot about assumptions versus behaviors. Users are telling you exactly what they want in real time through searches. So when someone types in, again, something like best HVAC company near me, they're not just browsing. It's not just a casual, you know, uh, versus, like watching like YouTube videos where maybe you're just looking for entertainment. This is real consumer behavior that we're tracking. They're evaluating their options. The interest already exists. You just have to capture it. The challenge is making sure you're not just capturing any demand, but the right demand. And this is one of the most important shifts in how to think about search. Keywords are still incredibly valuable, but they only tell part of the story. They tell you what someone is looking for in that moment, but not who they are, how serious they are, or how likely they are to convert. And that's where audiences comes in. When you layer audience signals on top of keywords, you're adding super crucial context, basically answering the question, is this the kind of person that I want to convert? And that combination is what leads to better lead quality, not just more traffic. And this is where a lot of opportunity gets left on the table. Google has built out a really robust set of audience tools from in market audiences to remarketing to custom segments to getting your own first party data. But many advertisers either don't use them or only scratch the surface. They end up relying heavily on keywords alone, which limits how precise your targeting can actually be. If you're not using these audience layers, you're essentially telling Google less about who you want and expecting strong results anyway. In marketing audiences are one of the most powerful signals that you can use. These are users Google has identified as actively researching or comparing products or services right now in the moment. Instead of casting a wide net, you're focusing on people who are already showing strong business signals. Wow, that was a mouthful. And that's what makes it so valuable. It brings efficiency into your targeting. You're not spending so much time on the quantity, you're focusing on quality. And you're not just reaching people who could be interested, you're reaching people who are definitely interested because they have already made the first move in making that search. Not everyone is in that immediate decision phase, though, and that's where context becomes really important. Affinity audiences help you understand long term interests, what people care about over time, essentially. Life events, on the other hand, capture what's happening right now, like major moments that often trigger buying decisions. Think, having a baby or getting a new job, getting married, stuff like that. So when you layer these on top of intent, you're adding depth, you're asking what's going on in their life that might influence that search, and that's what leads to more relevant, more effective targeting. This is another big mindset shift for a lot of advertisers. We tend to focus heavily on acquiring new users, but often your best opportunities are people who already know you. They've visited your website, they've engaged with your content, maybe they've even started the conversion process a time or two. These users have already shown interest, which means they require less convincing. So when you prioritize these audiences, you're building on existing momentum rather than starting from the ground up every single time. You can really see the impact in performance here. Warm audiences, like you see on the left, are people who are already familiar with your brand, tend to convert at higher rates, cost less to acquire, and move through the funnel faster. Cold audiences, on the other hand, like we see on the right, require much more effort, more touch points, more budget to convert, just a lot of extra effort. So if your strategy is heavily weighted toward cold traffic, you are naturally going to struggle with efficiency and lead quality. Shifting even part of your focus toward familiar audiences can make a really big difference. And this is where everything starts to come together, right? Better targeting is about layering multiple signals. You're combining intent with audience data, user behavior to refine targeting and applying exclusions to filter out low quality traffic. Each layer adds more precision, and the more precise your targeting is, the more likely you are to generate high quality leads. And finally, this is where automation and AI can really add value when it's used correctly and create a ripple effect of success through all of your campaigns. If you've built a strong foundation with clear signals and good data, optimized targeting can expand your reach in a super smart and efficient way. It helps identify patterns and high performing users that you might not have found manually. But, and this is super important, it only works well when your inputs are strong. AI isn't a replacement for strategy, it's just an amplifier, at least at this point. Cool. Now let's shift into social advertising, which plays a very different role in the overall funnel. If search is primarily focused on capturing existing demand, right? Social is responsible for generating it. This means the objective is not to respond to intent, but to build it. By capturing attention, introducing a brand, and creating interest over time. Because of this, the strategies that work in search don't really translate to social. To be effective here, your approach needs to align with how users engage with content in these environments. This distinction is crucial to understand. On the left, you see a search query for something like bucket bag, and the platform returns a list of options. We've all done this kind of search. Any doesn't have to be Google, it can be any any search platform. We've all been there. But the key detail is this: someone, me, because I have a severe bag addiction, had to actively search for that product in the first place. There is already intent present. The platform is simply responding to it. Social works very differently. The user could be scrolling through their feed with no intention of buying anything, and then boom, an ad appears, introducing them to a product that they might not have been thinking about beforehand. In that moment, the ad is not capturing demand, it's creating it from scratch, basically. Instead of responding to a known need, you are introducing a new one. And that shift fundamentally changes how your strategy needs to work because your first objective is not conversion, it's attention and relevance. This is also why social advertising feels more challenging and why performance may appear less predictable. There's significantly more competition for attention. Costs are definitely higher, and visibility into user behavior has decreased due to the privacy data limitations that we talked about earlier. At the same time, expectations around performance have not always adjusted to reflect these changes. What appears to be underperformance is often actually just a misalignment between strategy and the channel. When social is treated like a direct response channel without proper structure, results tend to suffer. A major factor contributing to this shift in signal loss, due to the privacy updates and platform changes, there is less data available for platforms to use when optimizing campaigns. This reduces their ability to accurately match ads to the right users without strong inputs. Consequently, advertisers need to take a more active role in controlling the quality of the signals being provided. I know we've talked about that a couple of times during this session, so really hammering it home. This is where first-party data becomes increasingly important. It allows you to restore clarity and improve your targeting precision. First-party data is one of the most valuable assets in today's marketing and business environment. It includes data that you collect directly from your audience, as the name might imply. Think about like website activity, anything you might find in a CRM record, email engagement, all different types of owned and verified data. It's more accurate and more reliable than third-party data. In a landscape where platforms have reduced visibility, this becomes a key competitive advantage. It enables more precise targeting, more relevant messaging, and ultimately more efficient campaign performance. One of the biggest challenges in digital marketing today is that the vast majority of traffic remains anonymous. Without additional context, these users cannot be effectively retargeted or nurtured. However, with the right approach, it is possible to identify and segment a portion of this audience. This transforms traffic from a passive metric into an actionable asset, sorry. Instead of simply generating visits, you are building audiences that can be engaged over time, leading to stronger outcomes and um, long-term benefits. Just as we discussed earlier, platforms optimize based on the signals they receive. However, in social advertising, the impact of signal quality is even more pronounced. With less available data overall, the platform relies more heavily on the inputs that you provide. High quality signals, think well-defined audiences, and strong engagement data enable more efficient optimization. On the other hand, weak and incomplete signals make it significantly more difficult for campaigns to perform effectively. High-performing advertisers approach this super differently. Rather than treating all users the same, they segment audiences based on behavior and level of intent. This allows them to align the messaging with where each user is in the decision process. High intent users are met with direct conversion focused messaging, while mid and low intent users are guided through educational content, social proof, repeated engagement, think, top of the funnel kind of content. This structured approach ensures that each interaction moves the user closer to conversion, no matter where they are. Ultimately, the most effective strategy is to build your audience before attempting to convert it. This begins with generating traffic and engagement, followed by identifying users and capturing meaningful signals. From there, you can retarget those users with messaging that aligns with their behavior and their intent. This approach shifts the focus from immediate conversions to long-term performance. Instead of retargeting with each, or restarting, sorry. Instead of restarting with each interaction, you are building a system where each touch point contributes to a stronger outcome. All right, now we've kind of laid a foundation of what's changed, why it's changed. Let's talk about what you can do about it. In most cases, the issue people are seeing isn't traffic, it's the structure. Many funnels are not intentionally designed, they're built over time, kind of spliced together across channels without like a clear system that connects all of them. So what we're going to walk through next is a simple structured approach that you can use to fix and align your funnel with how users are actually behaving today. Excuse me, I'm going to have a little bit of water. Okay, one of the most common issues we see is that businesses are not actually capturing the full value of the traffic they're generating. Users are clicking, they're visiting the site, but then they're leaving without being identified or re-engaged, which means each time they return, you're effectively paying to acquire them again. And this creates a cycle of inefficiency where spend increases, but performance doesn't necessarily improve. The goal is to break that cycle by ensuring that each interaction contributes to long-term value. Another key shift is that the customer journey is no longer linear. Users don't move from awareness to consideration to conversion in a straight line. Instead, they move across platforms, social, search, websites, what have you, often multiple times before making a decision. They may see an ad, conduct research, return later, engage again, and only convert after several rounds of that. Think about any time you've ever tried to buy something online. I'm sure we're all familiar with this kind of complex process. So if your funnel is built around a single one of those interactions or the linear path that we were used to maybe 50 years ago, it will not align with how decisions are being made today. your strategy needs to reflect a more dynamic journey. The first step is to capture demand when it already exists. This is where search plays a critical role. You want to prioritize high intent keywords, terms that indicate a user is ready to take action. At the same time, layering audience signals such as in-market users or past visitors helps refine that intent further. The focus here should be on bottom of funnel actions like calls, form fills, bookings, true conversion markers here. This ensures that when demand is present, you're positioned to convert it efficiently. The second step is to create demand where it doesn't exist yet. This is where, sorry, totally lost my train of thought for a second, guys. This is where social plays its role. The objective is to capture intent, introduce your brand, and begin building interest. This requires strong creative visuals and messaging that are designed to stand out in a crowded feed. It also requires a shift in messaging, focusing on education and value before attempting to convert. And most importantly, this step should feed into retargeting, so that engaged users can be moved further through the funnel over time. The third step is to capture the signal from those interactions. Without this step, traffic remains anonymous and cannot be leveraged effectively. This means implementing proper tracking, pixels, tags, and conversion events across all channels. It also means identifying users where possible through email capture forms or visitor identification tools. And finally, ensuring that this data flows back into your CRM so it can be used to improve targeting and optimization. This step is what transforms activity into actionable data. This is also where solutions like Dash by LocalIQ come into play. Dash is designed to help capture, organize, and act on lead data more effectively. It centralizes interactions, prioritizes leads, and enables automated follow-up so opportunities are not missed, even if they come in the middle of the night. In a fragmented funnel, having a system that connects these touch points becomes increasingly valuable. And it assures that the signals you're capturing are not only collected, but actually put to good use. The fourth step here is segmentation. Not all users are equal, and they should not be treated the same. By grouping users based on behavior, like what they viewed, clicked, or engaged with, you can better understand their level of intent. From there, you can prioritize users who are closest to converting while continuing to nurture those who need more time. This allows you to align messaging more effectively with where each user is in the decision process. The final step here is to retarget with purpose. This means following up with users based on their behavior, not assumptions. I know I sound like a broken record, but that is the one key true point that I want you guys to take away from this. Rather than repeating the same message, you're guiding users forward with a sequence of messaging aligned to their stage in the funnel. This may include introducing urgency, reinforcing value, or providing additional proof points. The goal is to move users toward a decision over time rather than expecting immediate conversion. An important advantage in executing the strategy is the scale and reach. The USA Today network provides access to a large and highly engaged audience across both national and local markets. With over 200 owned and operated publications, the ability to reach 1 in 2 US adults, this creates significant opportunity for visibility and targeting. When combined with the strategies that we've talked about today, this reach can be leveraged in a much more precise and effective way. When this approach is implemented correctly, the impact is cumulative. You are no longer restarting from zero with each interaction. Instead, each touch point builds on the last, capturing audiences, segmenting users, and reinforcing engagement over time. This creates a compounding effect where performance improves not just from individual campaigns, but from the system as a whole. And ultimately, that is what leads to more efficient spend and higher quality leads. Bring everything together. Here are the 3 key takeaways I want you to leave with. First, better leads come from better signals, not more volume. Think quality over quantity. It's not about driving more traffic. It's about improving the quality of the inputs you're giving platforms because that's what's ultimately driving your performance. Second, Google captures demand while social creates it. These channels serve different roles, and your strategy needs to reflect that. Relying too heavily on one or the other can also create gaps in your funnel. And lastly, capturing, segmenting, and retargeting intentionally is where the advantage comes from. The businesses that are seeing stronger results are not necessarily spending more. They're building more structured systems that can carry value forward with each interaction. When these pieces work together, performance becomes more predictable, more efficient, and ultimately more scalable. So with that in mind, next step is applying this to your own funnel. What we've covered today is not just theoretical, it's a framework that you can use to evaluate where your current strategy may be falling short and where opportunities exist. If you're interested in seeing how your campaigns align with these principles, where your signals may be weak or maybe where your funnel may be losing value, we'd be happy to walk you through all of that. You should see a prompt on your screen. Let us know if you would like to sit down for a personalized assessment. We'd be happy to provide more insight and help you get to where you need to be. Okay. Just want to make sure. Can somebody let me know in the chat? Do you guys see a box that's popping up? Maybe I just can't see it. Okay. I think we've got that figured out. Perfect. Okay, so while we're doing that, I'm also going to run through some questions. Let's see what we've got in the chat. Make sure I'm in the right place. Let's see. Okay, this is a really good question. What should I focus on what should I focus on first if I can only fix one thing? I think that that's a really interesting question. And I feel like that can be maybe a little bit personal to what your goals are and what kind of audience you're working with. But personally, if I had to prioritize one thing, it would be improving signal quality, like I talked about a couple of times throughout the presentation, specifically how you're capturing it. Oh, sorry, I just got an error message, guys. So you guys are not seeing a pop-up poll. Also, yes, you will be receiving a recording of this presentation via email after this. Okay, perfect. Okay, you guys can't see me, but you can see the pop-up. That's what's important. Thank you. I'm sorry for the hiccup there. Back to the question I was answering. What should I focus on first if I can only fix one thing? There's not really like a straightforward answer to that. Again, it depends on your priorities, but making sure you're properly tracking identifying visitors when you can and feeding that data back into the platforms that you're using is the highest impact way to get things moving in the right direction. Let's see. How long does it take to see results from this approach? Again, that's kind of a loaded question, but let me see if I can eloquently put this in a way that makes sense. Some improvements, like with search, can happen relatively quickly, like when you're refining your targeting, but the full impact doesn't come from building just one thing. It comes from building a system over time. As you kind of splice data together and segment more effectively, performance can become more effective and more predictable. So it really depends on how quickly you're doing that, and what your strategy is. Um, Here's another really good one. How do I improve lead quality specifically? Improving lead quality usually comes down to one, no, probably two things. And that's better inputs. Like I've said probably a million times. I know I sound like a broken record, but so important. And better filtering. That means refining what targeting signals you're using, like in marketing audiences or first party data. When those are in place, the platforms that you're using can optimize toward higher value users more effectively instead of, again, casting like a super wide net. Let's see. Ooh, is AI doing all of this automatically already? AI does quite a lot, doesn't it? I feel like that is kind of a hard question. AI does play a significant role in optimization, but it's only as effective as what you give to it, right? I don't know. I can probably assume that most of you guys have interacted with some sort of AI interface at some point in time recently. I think we all know that if we give them a generic, like a super generic question, for example, they're just going to give us a super generic answer or maybe even something nonsensical. So you really gotta you really gotta focus what you're providing to them first. Um, let's see. I've gotten a couple of questions, like industry specific questions. This framework isn't, how do I put this? The framework that we talked about is applicable across all kinds of industries, right? Because it's based on how people make decisions, not um, which is not really vertical specific, right? I think the point of any business is to convert. Whether you're in home services, healthcare, B2B, retail, whatever, the principles of capturing intent, and building audiences, um, is going to remain consistent. All right. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up. Let's see. Ooh, what if I don't have a lot of first party data yet? That's a very common thing to happen actually, and it just means your focus should be building that. That should be your top priority, and that can start with simple steps like improving your tracking, capturing emails, creating more opportunities for users and potential customers to engage with your brand. Even a small amount of high quality data can make a big difference over time, and it will, compact on itself. It will make a big difference. All right, guys. I want to thank everybody so much again for joining me. This has been wonderful. If you still have questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You'll also be receiving the slides and the recording in an email once we conclude here. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and thanks for joining.